My name is Dr. Daniel Fox, and I'm a licensed psychologist in the state of Texas. And today, I thought I would do my video from my Woodlands office in the Woodlands, Texas. So today, what I wanted to do is I wanted to talk about the etiology or the origin of those four borderline personality disorder subtypes. And I hope that you find it interesting. And we'll also talk about sort of at the end the value that awareness of our origins and backgrounds can be helpful when we talk about working with and treating borderline personality disorder. So let's get started. So the first type that we're going to talk about is the impulsive borderline personality disorder type. And what we find in these individuals' backgrounds, now it's also important to recognize that even though we're breaking these four subtypes up, a lot of times there is overlap. A lot of times just because we're going to identify a particular type, like first we're going to do the impulsive type, but it doesn't mean that that it causes one instance or several instances or experiences in someone's background does not guarantee or cause the outcome of borderline personality disorder or of a particular subtype. What these are is that this is based on research, and what this research says is that these components or these experiences has a high probability of producing a particular outcome related to a subtype. For example, so with your impulsive borderline personality disorder subtype, now these individuals, their family environment tended to be very highly emotionally reactive. Okay? So now if someone has that background, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to have borderline personality disorder. It doesn't mean that they're going to have an impulsive borderline personality disorder type. But what it finds is that this instance, associated with these other factors that I'm going to talk about in a minute, that there's an increased probability of developing the impulsive borderline personality disorder subtype. So I just want to make sure that that's clear, that we're not talking about cause per se, we're talking about factors related to outcome. And that's really important because when we talk about at the end about how we use our background or understand our background to help ourselves today, that it's important that we understand that, about what that means, our background, and how that impacts us today. Okay? All right, so now we'll really get started. All right, so we'll talk about the impulsive borderline personality disorder subtype. And as I mentioned, so that family environment tended to be highly emotionally reactive. We also found that it was a very sort of diversive type of environment, which created a tendency for a lot of variety and inability to tolerate boredom. So all this novelty. A lot of times you'll see folks along that impulsive borderline spectrum that they tend to have some histrionic type features, which is another personality type, and actually the histrionic personality disorder has been found to be on the borderline continuum. So also when we talk about parental control with your impulsive borderline subtype, we see parental control was very irregular, very inconsistent. It was often contingent, right? Then reward was random, right, with positive reinforcement. So when you did things that were good, maybe they were recognized, maybe they were ignored, maybe you were punished, or maybe you were rewarded. So it's not consistent, so you don't know what that outcome is going to be, which makes your behavior, when we're very little, very unpredictable. And sometimes we carry that as adults. And that can certainly factor into that impulsivity that we see with that borderline personality disorder subtype. And then the last factor here, specific for this subtype, is that there's rapid changes in parental standards of what is right and what is wrong. So those moral standards, let's say, that now we know that a lot of our decisions change as we grow, the way we see the world changes as we grow, but there are certain things that we know which are right and which are wrong. And what happens is these parental standards tend to change, agreements tend to change. So you don't really know where your foundation is, where your footing is, which makes things very uneven, very unpredictable, builds a lot of stress and a lot of anxiety inside the individuals as they grow up, and eventually, for what we're talking about, that these individuals develop that impulsive borderline personality disorder subtype. So let's talk about the next subtype, which is your petulant borderline personality disorder subtype. Now, the petulant subtype, there's a lot of discontent and erratic behaviors which are derived from parental inconsistency. So the parents are inconsistent, right? And so they failed to be treated in a moderately predictable manner. So this individual never knows what to expect. Are they going to pick me up from school? Are they going to take, if there's sports after school, are you going to take me to sports? Are you going to leave me there? If there's an invitation, the parent may say to like a birthday party as a kid, the parent may say, oh yeah, we're definitely going to take you. And then when it's time, the parent says, of course we're not going to take you. And then it becomes that child's fault. So, and sometimes the child can be doted on one moment and then chastised with little understanding as to why the next. So you're a hero one moment and you're a zero the next, but you don't really understand why or what's going on. So there's a lot of unpredictability. You don't know exactly what's going on. A lot of inconsistency, very erratic. A lot of discontent emotions, negative emotions. Parents serve as models of indecisiveness and unpredictability. And that indecisiveness and unpredictability, what happens is that it causes the child to, again, have that uneven footing. Okay? And you bring a lot of that inward. And that creates this wall, which we're calling the petulant subtype, the one that locks themselves up. Okay? They're stuffers. They stuff things in. They hold it inside. Okay? And you'll see that in background, sometimes loyalty is variable. And the child is often pulled between sides, causing increased stress and pressure. So if there's a divorce or a breakup of the relationship and the parents separate, so which side are you going to go? And they could ask, a 5-year-old, 6-year-old to decide, well, who are you going to go with? Mom or dad? Who do you love more? Who do you care about? And maybe the child is excited about a gift that they get from dad, from their father. And so they're excited. So then mom becomes very jealous and agitated and then accuses the child of loving dad more and then punishes the child for liking the gift. So with that, what we find is that can create the petulant type of borderline personality disorder. Now the next type is the self-destructive type. Now in this family environment, it tended to be very volatile for what's called that fledgling borderline personality disordered individual. Okay, so you see that it starts to build some of those early experiences because of that volatility, and these individuals are likely to be recipients of abuse in some cases. They learn that the value of self is very limited, and that emotions are to be held in and not expressed. So again, a lot like the petulant, you hold it in, but what happens is that it starts to build in this individual and build and build and build until it becomes this destructive explosion. And instead of going necessarily outward, a lot of times it'll go inward. And by inward, it can be severe depression, severe anxiety. Now, all of these subtypes can have that as well. But with this individual, we see that these emotions start to build. And when they build and they're not expressed, then they can be self-harming. They can, if things are going well, they'll be very destructive relationship, very destructive to those that are trying to help them. Okay? And those coping mechanisms, they're not really taught when they're children, how to deal with stress, how to deal with anxiety, how to support someone, caring with someone. It doesn't mean they can't be caring, it doesn't mean they can't be supportive, but they didn't learn those early models in which they can pull from. Okay? Those internal working models, internal early representations. So the individual learns to harm themselves to increase the likelihood that they will get their needs met. So the final type is that discouraged or quiet borderline personality disorder type. Now this type, what you see is that sort of during that developmental period, as their children, they're growing older, that you see that they become overly dependent or attached and dependent on a caretaker that discouraged autonomy and exploration, right? And all these little kids and children, it's normal for them to reach out. They want to explore their environment. They want to test their autonomy, their sense of efficacy, their sense of control over the environment, over themselves. These type of caregivers, they want to squelch that, they want to squash that, they want to hold that back. So they want to keep the child so close to them that the child doesn't build a sense of self-efficacy, they don't build a sense of autonomy, so they're shrouded. Now, the home tends to also be very neglectful of the child's needs, because it's the parent who's getting their needs met by being so controlling and very engulfing of the child. So the child gets a sense of neglect for their own needs. Their own needs aren't met, their own interests aren't explored. It's the parents that are being explored. There tends to be a very permissive or authoritarian parenting style, which is most common. Now, there's 3 types of parenting styles. Permissive, of course, is that the child's allowed to do anything they want. There is authoritarian, and I often think of authoritarian like a barbarian type of parent that's very rigid and very strict. And then there is the authoritative parent, which is the assertive parent, appropriate parent that puts boundaries in place, perspectives in place, and things of that nature. So for your discouraged or quiet subtype of borderline personality disorder, these individuals, parenting is mostly either permissive or authoritarian. Okay? And the child is often seen in these cases as a burden. They're in the way, and often they're trusted with little value, and he or she does not develop a core sense of self and value. So you might be thinking, well, wait, so I'm connected to this parent all the time, but yet I'm seen as a burden and in the way. That's exactly right. And if that sounds confusing, that's what happens during these individuals' developmental period. And as my clients and we explore sort of those early developmental experiences, we find that there's a lot of confusion and conflict that we need to discover and resolve and work through. And so the purpose of sort of understanding our etiology, right, and where we come from, is to assess the impact of the past on the present. And this is something I do a lot with my clients. Most clients, I see them for years at a time. And so we explore this and we really get into it. And what we want to do is we want to develop or understand a trajectory for treatment and how it impacts how you live today. How does your developmental, your etiology, perhaps of your disorder, but all of my clients, and I believe that everyone that's diagnosed with any disorder is more than your disorder. Okay? You are you, and you may be someone who has either borderline personality disorder traits or borderline personality disorder, but that's not who you are. And I know sometimes it feels like that, and sometimes a lot of my clients, what we're working on is separating their conceptualization of self from the disorder. That they are more than borderline personality disorder. They are more than bipolar disorder. They are more than sexual abuse survivor. That they're more than that. It's who they are. And it's separating that sense of self, building their sense of encouragement, self-efficacy, and getting understanding of how that past experience built or was influential to where they are today. And what I like to do also is sort of reconstruct how you live today and lessen the adverse impact of the past and how that's impacting you today. Okay? So it is possible to overcome the experiences that you've had in your past. It really is. It just takes time. And I know that it's difficult. And sometimes the way individuals that are along the borderline spectrum read situations very rapidly and quickly, and they become ignited very quickly, and it's hard to extinguish that flame. So the best thing to do is to put these factors in place, and by these factors, I mean factors that slow you down, that give you a greater degree of response. And that's exactly what good treatment should do. It should be self-exploration while giving yourself a wider area to respond instead of immediate stimulus and immediate response. And that is what I spend a lot of initial sessions with my client, and that's exactly what we're doing, is separating that initial ignition to lift off. Okay? And the way that I do that is certainly with self-exploration. I do a lot of encouragement. You probably noticed that in the videos, and I hope you did, because you should be encouraged. We do a lot of mindfulness, a lot of skill building, and that there are keys to overcome the hurts of yesterday and make today and tomorrow even better. And you can do it. You really, really can. So I want to thank you for your time today. I hope you enjoyed the change of setting, add a little variety to it. Please leave any comments that you may have. If you enjoy my videos, please encourage other people maybe to sign up and to subscribe and check them out. That would be great. I think this has been a wonderful benefit for me personally, and a lot of people have written a lot of nice things that these videos are helpful, and that certainly motivates me to continue to make them and know that that they're beneficial to folks who should know that this is a treatable disorder, that this is a disorder that you can learn to manage instead of it managing you. So I want to thank you again for your time, and I appreciate it very much, and please take care. Bye-bye.